Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Dumb SEO Questions, episode 209. Each week we meet here to answer the questions asked on the SEO Questions community on Google+, on the Dumb SEO Questions page on Facebook, and also on Dumb SEO QS on Twitter. With us tonight, we have David Rozam, the oldest man in SEO. David has been an SEO copywriter for 300 odd years, and he's been an SEO for about 12 of those. You can find David at writingforseo.org. Masataki Wasa is webmaster of wasaweb.net. What am I reading there, David?
It says, I'm a valuable antique.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Masataki Wasa is webmaster of wasaweb.net. He's an SEO who lives in Wimbledon, in London. Masataki is also a Google top contributor on the Google AdSense community. You can find Masataki at wasaweb.net. Micah Fisher-Kirshner is Senior SEO Manager for Zendesk.com. He lives in not too far from Mountain View in the US of A. And he's a regular on the SEO public speaking circuit. You'll see him at events like SMX. And Tim Capper is CEO of OnlineOwnership.com. Tim is a Google top contributor on the Google My Business community, a purveyor of body trays, or at least he works for a purveyor of body trays, but he's a conversion rate optimization specialist. And Tim says I'm a wanker. He said I'm a wanker again. And you can find Tim about 100 miles north of London, and in the village of Corby. You can find Tim at onlineownership.com. All right, our first question tonight attracted a lot of interest on Facebook. And look, I just wanted to shout out for people like Alan Blue Eyes and so many others who answered this one. There were 13 different responses to this particular post. Anyway, this was a question on SEO for dormant pages. It was from Neil Cheeseman. He said, had a question regarding a niche news website which has been established for 5 years using a WordPress framework. With new posts and URLs created each day, I feel that some control needs to be made and think the following might be a practical way forward. i.e. using Google Analytics, which the site has on all URLs. One, if any page, technically they are posts, hasn't been visited during the past year and hasn't got any external backlinks, then that old news item should be deleted. Or would it be better to just no index them? Any internal links would be removed. Or if any of these pages have internal links to other pages that do have traffic, then keep them. I see Casey Marquis gave an extensive answer, and then Alan Blue Eyes agreed with it. What do you guys agree with?
I'd be fine with just deleting. Yeah, I mean, there's no backlinks, there's no visits, and it's been a good set of time. I'd probably just delete get the data deleted these days. So I don't, having 404s or 410s is not necessarily an issue on its own. So clean your site, less old content that's not necessarily be of value. I think it's perfectly fine to delete. It's not to say that you can't no index and get them removed that way. It's I guess I just kind of think of it more as a cleaner site. In the end, Google kind of wants your site to be clean. It wants it to look good, and having stuff removed and things that don't necessarily need to be around anymore is one of the ways that can be done. It also makes your life a bit easier because you don't have to worry about maintenance and stuff for those pages any longer. So in the even longer run, I think 404 and 410 is I would say it's a preferred approach.
Thank you, Micah. Of course, there are other things too, though. Although if they're not getting traffic for a year, it's unlikely they have a link to them. But that's also another factor, isn't it?
Sorry, what about that last part?
I was just saying that what if, I mean, it's unlikely because a page that hasn't had any traffic for a year, it's unlikely to have a link to it. But, what if that page did have a link to it? Probably would be a good idea to delete that. Or no index it.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's a link to it, then the question becomes, and this is where it gets a little trickier, because if you're, I'm not as familiar in the news industry side of things, but in general, if it's a generic page, then there's always the opportunity there's always the ability to update the page and the opportunity to then gain a lot more newer traffic from that. So outside of kind of the news areas, if the page has got some links, it's a lot about data, that's a great time to go and refresh and really bring that page back so that it could actually start to regain content, more links, it can regain traffic and a better user experience in the aggregate by actually updating the page rather than removing it. So that's one of the ways I would kind of try to look at that. When it comes to like the news end, that's harder because you've got dates that are more or less set. That stuff is going to go away. If you're not a large site, like the BBC or New York Times, some of that part becomes historical record and sometimes needed to be kept, or it should be kept for the historical record. Smaller sites, not so much necessarily. So, I think Alan Leila's last name has some good suggestions about some of that as well, and so I would take his opinion as well for that part in the news section, or for those in more of the news industry.
Okay, I reckon we've covered it. Anybody else want to add something before we move on to the next? All right, let me tweet that. This one again from Neil Cheeseman, another one from our page on Facebook, Dumb SEO Questions. he said if a website doesn't have HTTPS, should there be a 301 to HTTP in the HT access? It's a trick question.
Well, go and explain why it's a trick question.
Because why would you want a 301 to HTTP? Because if a website doesn't have HTTPS, there'll never be a request for HTTPS.
Now let's throw the link back at you. But what happens if there was a link to the HTTPS, even if you did not?
Okay, it would throw an error because it doesn't. It would say port not responding or words to that effect.
Right, but wouldn't you want to keep the value of said link if you created a redirect and turned it off?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that one, Micah.
Sorry, wouldn't you want to keep the value of that link, thus a 301 redirect?
So, but to keep the value of that link, you'd have to create an HTTPS page. As Steve Wiedemann points out on Facebook, there's a general move towards HTTPS, or at least Google would like to have you to have it. And I think that an argument can be made for that too. It might be interesting. It depends on how the users educate themselves about HTTPS, and it might well be that if enough, if there's enough momentum changing to HTTPS, users might, out of habit, write a link as HTTPS. And so, in that case, that might be an argument for running a site in HTTPS.
What I'm trying to figure out is what happens if you do try to redirect and you don't have a certificate, and a browser goes to HTTPS version of the site. How does that respond? Because you could, have in your root HT access, for example, the redirect from HTTPS to HTTP. But if there's no certificate on the server, what happens? I just don't know. Okay, so even if it does sort of work, let's say technically it works, the question is how would browsers now react? Because if
you get a security exception potentially, is what happens.
Yeah. So I think that is going to change. Well, that's been changing, isn't it? Because it's going to be more and more explicit. That people are saying, I think you're going to get more warning-like thing, saying you are going to go to an HTTP site, not a secure site. And if the link is HTTPS, the assumption I think everyone works on is that you are going to go to an HTTPS site, the page, HTTPS page, sorry. So even if you could redirect, even if technically there are no issues, browsers might start to throw up security warnings. And it may be seen as some sort of deceptive thing. Not narrowly speaking in terms of search engine, etc., but broadly speaking, because you are, in a sense, leading people from a supposedly secure place to a less secure place, if that makes sense. The converse is always true, isn't it? If you have moved over to HTTPS, you want to make sure that all your traffic is redirected to the HTTPS. But I'm not so sure how really it works the other way around. Or making sure that everything lands on HTTP rather than HTTPS.
Yeah, look, in answer to your question before, Masataki, what would happen if? I think I can help there. If a site is not configured to have port 443 open, then there'll be a protocol error because the server simply won't answer on that port, even though that port's being requested. Well, it's the default port for SSL anyway. The other thing is if that server, even assuming that they did enable port 443, if they didn't have a certificate on that site, they would all of the browsers these days would throw an error and say this site is not what it seems to be. Back to safety. So in both of those cases, the 301, you can put a 301 redirect in HTTP access, but it's going to have no function because there's no way. I mean, the browser has to land somewhere first for HT access for the 301 redirect to actually begin, and it just wouldn't happen unless the server had been set up for HTTPS. So his question is, if the website doesn't have HTTPS, should there be a 301 to HTTP in the HT access? I think the answer is clearly no, but the question it opens up other questions which we've discussed here, and that is that it probably makes sense, depending on the value of the site, keeping in mind that you're going to put yourself down for the hire of a unique IP address. It could be from $2, $5, $10 a month, and an SSL certificate, and a reasonable one is about 100 a year, 100 US or 150 a year, up to well, it depends on how much you want to pay. You can pay $1,500 for an SSL certificate. Yeah, so I lost my train of thought, guys. Too old.
Yeah, that made sense.
I don't know where I was getting. I don't know where I was going, but I think I got there anyway.
Yes, I think you did. And you made.
All right, let's tweak this one and move on to the next. All right, another one from Neil Cheeseman. Good heavens. Having the same title and H1. He said, can someone please explain why having the same title and H1 on a web page is a problem? And if or why would it be likely to affect rankings? From Google, place the title of your article in a prominent place above the article body, such as in a tag. Make sure the title of your article page in the HTML tag matches the title of your article or equivalent. Don't know what's gone. Yeah, I don't know what's gone wrong there, but anyway, a little bit of. And we had an answer from Steve Wiedemann. Also, answers from Chase Rayner and Alan Blue Eyes. And Chase Rayner was complaining because he didn't get 3 likes.
Ah, poor Chase. I think that there's a lot of getting collective knickers in a twist in these answers. I think that if you believe that that Google is trying to set up an environment on the internet where content makes as much sense as possible to people who experience that content. When we get into saying whether H1 is deprecated or not, I think that it has to be important. You know, it's a headline on whatever kind of content you make, be it a document or a newspaper or a flyer or something on the internet, is an important statement. If you get that headline wrong, people won't engage with it. We know that the headline is something that some fantastic number of people, percentage of people only interact with. They'll forget the rest of the content. They'll never get around to reading it. So I believe that the H1, as it's called here, the H1 tags, the headline, is very, very important. You've got to get it right. And if it indeed represents what the article is about, then there's a very good chance that the keywords that you've selected to build this piece of content around will appear in them. So I'm not sure whether we really need to put down definite guidelines or definite rules for us to obey. It seems to me that doing this in a sensible publishing fashion will say that the H1 tags are important, and you will probably get key phrases or at least something very closely semantically related to your main key phrase coming in there. And if it is only related, maybe you need to think about what the theme of your article is. I generally try to make the title different from the H1 tag, but it's not something that I sweat too much over. But I think that, yes, it's a you know, think about your users. Think about your users. Think about what you're writing and how you would write it in a way, if there weren't any thoughts about Google's rules. And I think that these days you're probably going to be on the right sort of track. Anyway, I'm sure someone else has got a completely different view, but that's mine.
Thank you, David. Anybody else?
I mean, I would probably do some qualification to it for what David had, because more and more, I personally see this in a lot of areas, but there are differences of opinion for what that user experience is based on how someone is entering the page. So the difficulty starts to become, how do you write for somebody that's a search user and having for that search experience versus somebody coming in from a different page? And I think that is where things more difficult, all in all, because then those conflicts can occur between what Google is saying they want versus what users coming in through the source want. I don't disagree in terms of, like, I personally think having from a search experience, that having the title somewhat close to the header or the headline of the page makes sense. I think I'm more of the philosophy of, don't make me think, don't confuse me. If I'm coming in from search and I look for specific information and you throw me something else when I hit that page, even if the rest of the page is consistent to the topic, if it's actually right off the bat different, you've just confused me, and likelihood of me bouncing or not converting because I'm thrown off increases. So I'm usually of the view to have like the H1 and the title to be fairly similar. It doesn't have to be exact. It just needs to be kind of on the same point. Now there are exceptions where you can change it up a bit, and it probably is fine. But within the news side, I think the fact that it has to be at least pretty close is much more important to me outside the news kind of area of SEO.
Fair enough. All right. Anybody else?
I agree. That's sensible. That's. I don't think Mike has contradicted anything I said there. You just kind of made it clearer. Has to be good.
All right. Any contributions, Tim, or on the body trays still at the moment, mate? All right. Let's move on to the next. And this one from somebody called URL Shortener. I remember URL. All right, so URL Shortener said, is it okay to display a subcategory and parent category name on the title, or just display the main category name on items? Indeed, display main category name on items. Right now, I have 10 categories and 60 subcategories. The problem is that there are duplicate subcategory titles, e.g. Subcategory abstract, it appears in 5 categories, but all titles are abstract image gallery bar mysite.com, when I think it should be abstract maincat1 image gallery mysite.com, abstract maincat2, and so on, mysite.com, etc. Is that good? What's the best way to do this, guys?
I usually leave the main cat out when it comes to the title tag. And my own personal preference for that is because you have a limited amount of space and you're trying to get that page to show up for the abstract in this situation. And by adding in more terms, you reduce the value of said abstract. So if somebody's looking for abstract image gallery, they don't necessarily have in mind or care about what category it is within your website. In fact, I would even take out the .com from the title in a lot of cases, because you're trying to establish a brand, not a website, in the title too, as a way to kind of be much more succinct and put more value for every word that's created, for every word you've used in the title tag. I'm sure there are situations where having main category in there are a better option. It might be a keyword that's relevant for the abstracts query, and maybe there's a way to kind of work it in. My usual preference, though, is to leave out the main cat in the title and leave it in the page itself, where you have more room and more opportunities to showcase where this fits once they hit within your site, as a way to say, okay, this is where I've come within a website and how I can go about. Before I hit your website, I'm not really, I would leave that as part of the breadcrumb, actually. That's essentially where that URL section is. And you can have that in the breadcrumb and save that value that's usually fairly weighted in the title and leave it in the breadcrumb there. I think that's probably the best option, so that you still get both of what you're trying to imply with your search result.
Yep, thank you, Micah. Anybody else? I think that covers it for Mr. URL Shortener. If not, he can ask again next week. Right, here's one from Ahmed Kumar. He says, index pages disappear after 5 or 10 minutes. Ahmed said, hi, my news website is indexed in Google News Hindi and showing news there. But after 5 or 10 minutes, it disappears from Google News, while other websites' news remain for a longer time. One more thing, only 2 or 3 news from my website appears in Google News, even though we are posting 100 news articles on a daily basis related to all of the latest news, breaking news, sports, business, technology, and all. I haven't encountered that. I imagine a fresh article probably gets a run on the board. I really, this is in news, which is really a category all of its own, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not very familiar on the Google News side, but the comment about there's a possibility that the other sites that are coming in are more authoritative, and you might be faster in breaking the news, but once the others come in, they're more authoritative and take over. I think that could but to me that makes logical sense. But I'm not familiar enough to be able to say for certain on this topic. You could always check. I mean, the thing is like, take a look at who's beating you. What is it and who's coming up? Are they better or more authoritative? Is there something in their code or their setup that's making them stay longer? Yeah, you can run surveys of which article is better in order to tell, are more people bouncing from your article versus the other article that's coming 5 to 10 minutes later? Is there something in there that's intrinsically better? And that should hopefully at least get you started down the path to understand why you're disappearing so quickly.
Yeah. All right. Okay, you're off to work now, Micah?
That I am.
Okay, buddy. Safe journey to work.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, mate. Thanks for your contribution tonight. All right. Here is our 6th question tonight. This one from Sonab Shrivastava, who asked a question that's puzzled us all. Why doesn't my page appear on the first page of a search engine result? Sonam said, hi, I have an issue with my client's website. It's a 6-month-old website for offering taxi services in Indore, India. When I search by the domain name Atlantic Cab, it appears on the 2nd page. Why doesn't it come on the first page by name? Please help. And the website is cabatlantic.com.
Okay, so I had a quick look at this one earlier. Okay, so firstly, if you actually just search for your site, has been completely replaced by Google, just calling it Atlantic Cab. So the first thing I thought, okay, so we looked at your meta title. It's way too long for the character limit, and also include your brand in there. So whilst I was looking at your meta title, I also got like something like 25 in there, which reserves the right to use as a spam indicator. So I would strip those down to 3. Looked at contact us page, for example, and your contact us page doesn't even have contact us or your brand name in it, which is a bit crazy because it's your contact us page. So you really need to actually look at all your pages and get them in order. Get them in order that a user will actually see something in the search results and know what the heck you're on about or what product or service you offer. The second thing is I wanted to see what kind of sort of marketing you've done for your name and your telephone number. And there's literally nothing out there. There's nothing online. There's no mention of your name together with your phone number online. So you certainly want to sort that out. You've basically done no marketing and nobody's mentioning you online whatsoever. So the question here is whether you look at some, just to get things going, maybe some business citations in your area. And what I mean by business citations is, are there any sites in the area that recommend cabs? Can you contact them and get yourself listed? Are there any other businesses in the area, maybe wedding venues that have a page that recommend cabs? Can you get yourself listed? Are there any hotels that list cabs, restaurants that list cabs? Can you contact them, introduce yourself, drop them off a card or send them an email. We work in this area, etc., etc. Start getting people to start mentioning you. Market yourself. You've got to market a business. The second thing is I started kind of, in terms of content, you don't have content. You've got your service page, about it. So you've got a massive opportunity there to actually start creating some content in the form of news or a blog or a resource, in terms of providing actually something that users would want to know. You're then obviously providing it on a branded website, on your website. They turn, download your app, or actually just call you and book a cab. So a quick search revealed events that are going on this month. You've got the food festival coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So, for example, you could do a bit of research on the food festival. You could provide a page on your blog, getting food indoors, food festival tips, travel tips. You could provide information on, which roads, because, you're cabbies. You're going to know which roads are going to be the best way to get there, when it's going to be. Parking options for people. Obviously, you want to kind of make it that, guys, it's probably a better option if you book a cab rather than trying to make your way there in your own car. But of course, if people want to do that, provide them with some information, because your name is going to stick in their mind, and the next time they're going on a night out or a day out and they need to book a cab, you know, Atlantic's in the back of their mind. So yeah, you need to start looking at this. You need to start marketing yourself, get your actual pages in order in terms of how they're going to appear in search, your titles, get rid of those spammy keywords. You need to start marketing, get out there. Places where you can, you know, where you can that list cabs for their customers, and self-listed, and also provide information that will also target and attract people, in the sense of, well, how am I going to get to the food festival? And oh, look, there's an article. Best places to park, what times, what roads are going to be busy. But you know what? This guy's making it sound like it's absolutely horrendous for me to even try and drive there. I might as well just book this cab. Provide an estimated cost so people already know, they've kind of got in their mind. And work your way through events coming up, you know. You could even pick some of the like, not necessarily just events, but some of the main places that are always going to be busy. I don't know if there's like a main theater there or something. Always pick, you know, like some of the main attractions, whether they be nightclubs, whether they be theaters, some of the better known, very popular restaurants. They don't have to be up and coming events, and you can always provide details on parking the area, what the cost of that parking is, you know, whether you want to, where cab stations are, where people can pick cabs up around. But then again, of course, at the end of the article, you always say, look, you know, Atlantic Cab, you know, we're an app, or you can phone us and pre-book us beforehand, etc. This is where we'd meet you, or whatever the case may be, or drop you off. So yeah, provide that kind of information. You know, people want to know it. They want to know what's going on in the area, and by providing that information, you're also getting yourself seen and visible. So, but your biggest thing is your marketing. You know, there's no marketing done there. You can't just create a website and think, you know, that you're going to be found. You need to market it.
I reckon that's a top answer. Thank you, Tim. Any embellishment required, David Masatagi? No, I'm going to call that a wrap. Let me tweet that. Already done it, damn it. Okay, here's one from Erin McKay. We remember Erin. It's titled Schema Markup for Home Address. Erin said, okay, peeps, I'm working with a company that sells all over the USA, but they are based in a certain state. Should I do schema markup for their home address, even though their target market is not local? My personal thought process is that it's not needed, but I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on this. Thanks so much for any help.
So they sell countrywide, but of course they still have a main, like a physical address somewhere. So the physical address is not necessarily going to be across the site. Okay, remember, obviously schema, you need to actually mock up what's on page. So the actual physical address, because they're selling countrywide, is not necessarily going to be on Twitter site-wide. It will more than likely be just on the contact us page, or the T's and C's page, or the, you know, things like that. So in this instance, the site-wide would have organization. So it would have name, URL, description, you know, the tagline of the whatever the business is. Obviously, main contact number, because I'm assuming that would be site-wide, because if people want to call. Possibly email address. I don't know. They might not include that until they get to the contact page. But then you can use your same as, which is all your social media widgets. You can also include legal entity name, and depending on what their actual, you can also include their, is it the NACAP, the North American, the code for their business, but it all depends. So that would be organization site. Pages that actually include their physical address, which would more than likely be the contact us page, terms and conditions page, because most countries require you to have your full address in the T's and C's page. And if you have any other page that requires your physical address on, that's where I would actually mark it up as local business. You could also then, in the local business, add in your hazmat app into that. Depending on what your product is, depending on what you're selling, I mean, I don't know. You don't specify, but based, etc. I mean, I don't know if this is like a click and collect. So for e-commerce, it's always great to create a location-based things. A lot of countrywide e-commerce on here. Area-based pages. So in click and collect, we literally take the entire into click and collect areas or stations. We list the physical address and mark them up, you know, specifically. The net result of that is if somebody, so these guys, my example, these guys are women's clothing. People don't tend to just go clothing. They tend to search women's clothing because they want to see it today. They want to see where they can go pick it up, etc. And they normally specify a locality. 90% of all things, 85% of all search queries now contain a location. So what this has done is reinforced that actually we do work in that area, we do deliver in that area, and there's the click and collect areas for that specific thing. So you tend to search women's clothing and the location now, and we are featuring obviously now as well as so yeah, there's a lot of things. But to get back to the main question, organization site-wide, local business on your contacts, T's and C's, and product on your products.
Thank you, Tim. Top answer. And I think we'll call that a wrap, because I've got a feeling that Masataki and David are on the phone. All right, let me tweet that and we'll move on to the next. Erin McKay, good to hear from you, and hope to hear from you again soon. All right, let's move on to the next. Because I'm not sure if there is a next. Yes, there is. There's a news item. Native advertising. Tim, is that something that you'd like to talk about or not?
I didn't see this article. why you should add native advertising to your marketing strategy. And what do they mean? Well, it depends what their narrative on native advertising is.
No, unfortunately, I didn't do my homework. No, we'll pass on this one and go to the next. And I know what's coming up there. It's thank you for watching time. And I see we still have eyeballs looking at us, and we thank you for that most sincerely. Your interest in what we do makes what we do worthwhile. We'll be back at the same time next week to do this all again. But for now, it's